Libyans elsewhere, and to Gaddafi's regime that the city is united, that there's determination, there is resolve, and that that could only strengthen them as time goes by, especially with the small military victories that they are able to score right and left. Benghazi, effectively, one could say, without using the term too loosely, has become an independent state within what used to be Libya. There's a provincial council, there are government officials, they're issuing circulars, they're making public pronouncements, they have envoys now who are discussing with the outside world. This might be in the interest of the East, but clearly the interest of a unified Libya requires that dealing with the situation in Tripoli and dealing with Gaddafi's regime soon.
And clearly those sorts of funerals which we've just seen there in Benghazi were only set to increase the resolve of the rebels based there. Tariq, thank you very much indeed for your assessment. Now, as the fighting continues, so does the exodus. China continues to pull its nationals out of Libya. The government says it's evacuated nearly 36,000 people from the country. It's the largest overseas operation ever undertaken by Beijing. It's even taken the unprecedented step of sending a Navy missile frigate to the Libyan coast. But thousands of Bangladeshis remain trapped, unable to get out of the country. Their government's been criticised for being too slow to take action. But Walia Rahman, a former Bangladeshi Foreign Affairs Secretary, says the government is doing its best to get its people out.
Out of 8 million Bangladeshis working abroad, about a little over 50,000 more or less Bangladeshis work in Libya. And they were very happily working all these days until this revolution broke out. Now, many of them have gone to Tunisia, majority of them, and the rest of them have gone to Egypt. And Tunisia and Egypt taken together would be about 4,000 to 5,000. And many more are coming to the border. And the government of Bangladesh is giving all support, all possible support, in lifting them from those two countries. And also, they are considering situation, depending on the situation, developing situation in Libya.
Why is it taken so long for the Bangladeshi government to get into action to help these people?
Well, I tell you, because we thought that situation will calm down, but then as soon as we realized that no, it is not going to calm down soon, or anytime soon, then the government of Sheikh Hasina has been trying its level best to get them out as soon as possible and give them all kinds of support.
Well, other foreign nationals have been fleeing across the border, mainly into Tunisia. Al-Jazeera's Mohammed Val is at the Ras Ajdir crossing on the Libya-Tunisian border. Mohammed, just bring us up to date with what's happening on the border where you are. What have you been seeing?
Yes, Darren, compared to the last few days, today we have seen a dwindling number of people coming out of Libya. Until now, it's about midday or a little later. Until now, we have about 350 foreign workers who have already crossed this crossing behind me. As you can see, there are more aid workers here behind me that you can see than actually refugees coming out of Libya. This, if we compare it to the last few days when about 3,000 to 4,000 people were crossing every day in average, we can see that the number is dwindling considerably. We don't know what's the meaning of that. We have been asking people here to explain that to us. Some of them have been saying that the situation is calm along the road that they have been driving through to come to this crossing, while some Africans, particularly Ghanaians, have been telling us about harassment along the road. They said that their phones were taken from them, some of their property was stripped off from them, and that they were harassed along the road. But the story that we have been told by Egyptians is different. They said everything is calm. I was even asking a man who had some wounds on his face, and I was trying to get him to explain to me why he has some wounds on his face and why he was saying at the same time that nothing happened to them. And we can't understand that. Was it because they were afraid of the Libyans if they say anything bad against them? We don't understand. But the problem now, the main issue that is unsolved until now here is the problem of the Bangladeshis. About 2 or 3 kilometers from here, we have about 4,000 of them still stranded, unable to find any transport outside the country. And they have been complaining of bad living conditions.
All right, Mohammed Val there on the Libyan-Tunisian border. Mohammed, thank you very much indeed for the update there. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters have clashed with police in Egypt's northern city of Alexandria. Several people were injured as they attempted to storm a building which houses the state security agency. Demonstrators say officers inside were trying to destroy documents linked to human rights abuses during the rule of ousted President Hosni Mubarak. And in the capital, Cairo, Egypt's former interior minister has pleaded not guilty on charges of money laundering and profiteering. Habib El Adli was arrested last month and is also widely blamed for being behind brutal attacks by security forces on protesters during the recent uprising. China's leader Wen Jiabao has pledged to reduce inflation and corruption and raise his people's income levels. Wen told the National People's Congress in Beijing the measures are necessary to maintain social stability. The theme of happiness along a 5-year economic plan dominated his address at the start of this year's parliamentary session. Well, earlier I spoke to Teng Jimeng, a professor at Beijing's Foreign Studies University. He told me what he considered to be the main message of the Premier's speech.
The most important message that came out from Premier Wen Jiabao's work report is that it's high time for China to address the issue of inflation and also the kind of complaints generated by the boom and by particularly the fact that the majority of people actually left behind by the kind of economic boom right now. And so in a sense, I think two issues stand out. One is, as Premier Wen Jiabao has pointed out correctly, the pitfalls because of the economic boom. For example, the rising inequalities and also the excessive investment in the asset sector and particularly in the building sector, and as well as the kind of economic development that benefits the cities and industries rather than the farmers and also the services. So in this sense, I think that Premier Wen Jiabao was very much correct in sending out that very message that the government is now putting great emphasis on addressing those issues that are plaguing the nation.
Teng Jimeng talking to me earlier. Now, a national period of mourning has been announced in Nepal. The two-time former Prime Minister Krishna Prasad Bhattacharya has died at the age of 87. He led a popular movement to restore multi-party democracy twice in the 1990s. He'll be cremated on Sunday. In India's financial capital, Mumbai, thousands of people have lost their homes after a fire engulfed the Garib Nagar slum near Bandra railway station. It's home to around 10,000 people, including Rubina Ali, who appeared in the Oscar-winning film Slumdog Millionaire. To the Americas and in Peru, parents are mourning their 3 young daughters who were buried by a landslide. A torrent of rock and mud swept away their home. Heavy rain triggered the disaster in the northern town of Moyobamba. 3 other people died and several others are missing. And in Bolivia, people made homeless by mudslides last week remain in makeshift accommodation. The worst natural disaster in the capital, La Paz, killed at least 50 people. Thousands were forced to flee as buildings collapsed across 7 districts. Italy's Prime Minister, Silvio Berlusconi, is back on trial on alleged corruption charges. He's accused of fraud and embezzlement over the acquisition of television rights on his media empire. He had his immunity from prosecution largely withdrawn in January. He faces a separate trial in April on charges of paying for sex with an underage nightclub dancer and allegedly trying to cover it up. He denies the charges. 3 executives at the French car maker Renault have been offered their jobs back after their boss admitted a spying scandal may have been a hoax. In January, Renault lodged a legal complaint over suspicions of spying targeting its high-profile electric vehicle program. The French finance minister is warning Renault must face all the consequences if it's been duped. France will enforce a ban on full face veils from